So last week was Yom HaShoah, it was Holocaust Remembrance Day, which usually takes place on the 27th day of Nisan, which is during the time of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. It's a day of solemn commemoration for Jewish communities around the world. And today in Israel, it was Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Remembrance Day for its fallen soldiers, followed by tonight by Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel's Independence Day, so it goes from mourning to celebration. And the story I want to tell you starts off with a quote from Roman Kent. Roman Kent was an Auschwitz survivor. He's actually related to Dan Yashinsky, who we both know very well, a classic RONIT storyteller. Roman Kent was a survivor of Auschwitz. And he was once asked, what was it like in Auschwitz? And his answer was, all I can tell you was, a minute was like a day was like a week was like a month was like a year. But the most important thing I can tell you about what I had experienced in the Holocaust was this. This is what I learned, this one I want to share with you. Hate is never right, and love is never wrong. Hate is never right, and love is never wrong. And I always think about that quote. If a survivor of Auschwitz could come out of that camp and tell us that hate is never right, and love is never wrong, certainly we can as well. So that's the quote I want to start off this story with. And the story goes like this. It was Yom HaZikaron in Israel, Israel's Remembrance Day for its fallen soldiers. And they have two sirens on that day, one at 8 p.m. the night before, and the next morning at 11 a.m. And those moments of silence, the entire country, almost the entire country, comes to a halt. People standing in restaurants, people standing on the street, people driving in their cars, people in shopping centers, they just stop. And they have a moment of silence for the fallen soldiers in Israel's many wars. I think there's close to 26,000 at this point. And almost everybody in Israel has been touched by the loss of one of their family members or cousins or close friends during all the various wars Israel's fought. So this is Yom HaZikaron. And I was in a dining room at a hotel in Jerusalem called the Inbal Hotel. And I was sitting in the dining room with a Holocaust survivor by the name of Max Eisen. Does anybody know Max Eisen? Okay. Max Eisen is an he passed away a few years ago, exceptionally heroic and courageous Holocaust survivor who wrote his memoir, his first book he ever wrote called By Chance Alone, which won the Canada Reads Award on CBC. And an exceptional story of courage and bravery and resilience. And we were sitting in the dining room on Yom HaZikaron, and almost never happens with two Jewish people, we got carried away in conversation, right? And we forgot to look at the clock. And by the time 11 o'clock came around, the only two people sitting in the dining room were myself and Max Eisen, and the waiters, who were mostly Arab waiters, who were cleaning up the tables because the dining room would close at 10:30, but we were just going on and on. And as we were talking, all of a sudden what happened? The siren went off. So what did Max and I do? We rose, and we stood in silence for the next minute. Most of the Arab waiters just kept shuffling around doing what they're doing, and that's understandable, but one of them went like that, which is the universal sign of, I won't say it in a synagogue, but you know what that sign means, right? Cursing basically what was going on. And I was praying and hoping that Max did not see it. I was hoping and praying he didn't see it, right? We finished off our conversation. I went upstairs to my room, and I called on Max. I said, Max, are you okay? He said, no, I'm shaking. I said, did you see what I saw? I said, I saw it. I said, give me a few minutes. So I hung up the phone on him, and I called the hotel manager, and I told him exactly what I saw. And the hotel manager was very upset. He said, come, meet me down in the dining room where you saw that incident in 10 minutes from now. So I came down to the dining room 10 minutes later, and there all the waiters were lined up, and he looks at me and says, which one was it? Which was the one who gave that obscene sign when Israel was remembering its fallen soldiers? And the 10 Arab waiters approximately were standing here. I looked from one to the other to the other. And then my eyes locked on the person who I thought it was. And then I kept going. I looked back at the hotel manager and said, listen, I can't be sure who it is, but let me give a message to these people who are standing here. And I said to them, and I said to myself, what is the point of singling out a person who knows what kind of experience he might have had at the hands of Israeli soldiers in a difficult experience? Who knows what he was going through? And what's the point of singling them out and creating even more hatred in the world? So I looked at the waiters and I said, listen, we've all had experiences in life. You don't know what people are going through, but I was sitting with a Holocaust survivor who lost over 80 members of his family during the Second World War. For him, Israel was the hope and the future of the Jewish people. And when you did what you did, can you imagine how terrible you felt? Imagine you're in your own village, you're commemorating loss of one of your own family members, and somebody comes in and disrupts it with this kind of gesture. So all I'm asking you to do is, in the future, try to put yourself in the shoes of other people. And if both sides, Israelis and Palestinians, could put ourselves in each other's shoes, maybe one day we'll have peace. And that's how I finished. I went upstairs to my room and I called Max. I asked Max, this is what I did. Was it the right thing? And Max said, yes, you did the right thing. What was the point in furthering the conflict? And all of a sudden there's a knock on his door, and the hotel manager sent him a gift of fruit, a basket for him of fruit, an expression of apology for what had happened. So that's the end of the story. But I would like to add that had I come across a quote by Roman Kent before that story happened, I would have added that to the story, because basically what I was saying was echoing Roman Kent's feelings that hate is never right and love is never wrong. Hate is never right and love is never wrong. And as we commemorate Yom HaZikaron, we should always remember that the answer to hate is not more hate, it's more light and more goodness and more kindness. So that's my first story. I'm going to hand it back to Brian.